Chapter 101. When Charlie was in Chatterton Town, he had tried all kinds of methods but failed to see Rovio Corporation's boss, Leo Kyle. As soon as he returned to Beeford City, Rovio Corporation Inc.'s men contacted him and asked him to take the second daughter of the Daly family to meet with Leo Kyle. Karen Daly was in Chatterton Town, and rumor has it that Leo Kyle was also in Chatterton Town. Today, Karen Daly had just returned to Beeford City, and then Leo Kyle also came to Beeford City. Charlie thought that this was definitely not a coincidence. He guessed that it should be that Leo Kyle had taken a fancy to Karen Daly for a long time, but Leo Kyle knew that since Karen Daly is his subordinate's wife, it would not be good to pursue her in Chatterton Town. Seeing that Karen Daly left Chatterton Town and came to Beeford City, such a good opportunity would not be missed easily by a prurient man like Leo Kyle. That was why Leo Kyle followed her here. After following her, it was not good for him to ask Karen Daly directly, so it was better for him to have a meeting through Charlie. Even if Leo Kyle's subordinate discovered this matter in the future, he could still say that he knew nothing about it. He could say that he never asked about the origin of the gifts sent by others. Charlie didn't care what Leo Kyle saw in Karen Daly, and Charlie didn't care how long Leo Kyle would be interested in Karen Daly. He only remembered one sentence. As long as he could bring Karen Daly to him, Leo Kyle would agree to whatever Charlie wanted to do. Charlie did not want much. He only wanted Rovio Corporation Inc. to cooperate with Gook Corp, so that the major shareholders of Gook Corp would no longer look down on him and let him take over Gook Corp. Although he still had some feelings for Karen Daly, but compared to the opportunity of cooperating with Rovio Corporation Inc., Charlie chose the latter without hesitation. The Daly house was not big. It was only a 2-story building. Compared with the Gook family's mansion, it wasn't even as spacious as the Gook servants' residence. Samuel Daly took a fancy to this place because it was a rich area in Beeford City. He felt that his social status would be elevated. But in such a moderately big place, Karen Daly still couldn't find her mother after searching for several times. She also realized that she was too impulsive. Since Samuel Daly had lured her here, he would definitely have sent her mother to somewhere else in advance and would not let her see her again. It was impossible for Samuel Daly to tell her where her mother was, so she could only think of other ways. Karen Daly closed her eyes and breathed in. When she opened her eyes again, a white light flashed before her eyes. She took a closer look and saw a glowing object lying in the grass a few steps away. Karen Daly approached and picked it up. It was a platinum ring. Karen Daly remembered that the ring was bought for her mother, using the money from her first design commission. Her mother had been wearing it all these years and had never taken it off. Yesterday, Karen Daly saw that her mother still had it on her hand. Why did the ring fall here? Karen Daly wiped it with her hand, and her fingers were stained with bright red blood. Did something happen to her mother? Karen Daly was flustered because of this thought. At this time, Samuel Daly came with Charlie. Charlie looked at Karen Daly and smiled very flatteringly. "Karen, go clean up, I'll take you to meet someone." Karen Daly held the ring in her palm and took a pause. Then she asked, "Samuel Daly, where is my mother? Where did you hide her?" Karen Daly would rather believe that her mother was hidden by Samuel Daly or even beaten. But she was not willing to accept that something even horrible would happen to her. "Karen, as long as you meet someone with young Master Charlie, you can see your mother when you come back." Samuel Daly never questioned what Charlie asked him to do. He only knew he has to give away his daughter. "Allow me to call her first. As long as I can confirm that she is fine, I will meet whoever you want me to see." Karen Daly said while biting her lip and clenching the ring in her hand. "Second miss, Madam has gone today." An old servant who had worked in the Daly family for more than 10 years and watched Karen Daly grow up couldn't stand it anymore, so he stood up and spoke out. Samuel Daly snapped, "Uncle Liang, what are you talking about?" If Uncle Liang dared to stand up and say that, he certainly had no intention to continue working there. He pointed to Karen Daly's position and said, "Madam jumped down from the 3rd floor and fell here. She died on the spot. Her body was sent to the funeral house already. Madam jumped down from the 3rd floor and died on the spot. Her body was sent to the funeral house." There were only these words in Karen Daly's mind. Except for these words, she could not hear any other sound or see anyone else. Her heart seemed to have fallen into a pot of boiling oil, and her strength seemed to be drained by the pain. Her mother talked to her with a smile yesterday. She told Karen that she would live a good life with her in the future. However, just one night had turned her world upside down. They would never see each other again in the future. And her good father, Samuel Daly, refused to tell her the news that her mother had passed away, and even forced her to agree to his requests. What did his wife and children mean to him? Just a tool that can be used to get power and riches? Samuel Daly, you are really so cruel. Your heart is indeed as black as night. Since he was so greedy for power, Karen Daly swore that she must destroy everything of him and make sure he will regret this. Second miss. Uncle Liang, thank you for telling me. Karen Daly bowed deeply to Uncle Liang and looked up at Samuel Daly. Karen Daly did not cry or quarrel. She just looked at Samuel Daly quietly. She looked at Samuel Daly and raised her red and tender lips. She was smiling, but her eyes were cold and frightening. It brought a piercing coldness. Samuel Daly felt a little nervous. He opened his mouth but didn't say anything. Charlie said, "Karen, my condolences to you. Anyway, people can't come back to life after death. You can come meet someone with me first. After that, we can prepare the funeral for Auntie and send her off with dignity." "Meet who?" Karen Daly asked calmly. "Leo Kyle of Rovio Corporation, Inc." Charlie didn't want to hide anything from Karen Daly. After all, if a man had an identity like that of Leo Kyle, no woman would look down on him. In Charlie's eyes, Karen Daly was no exception. Sure enough, Karen Daly simply smiled, nodded, and agreed without any hesitation. If he had known that Karen Daly would agree so easily, Charlie felt that he should have taken action in Chatterton Town, and he didn't have to wait until today to see Leo Kyle. Karen Daly didn't really want to go to see Leo Kyle with Charlie. Her real purpose was to leave the Daly house with Charlie and leave the cold place that doesn't feel humane at all. Her mother. Thinking of her mother, Karen Daly clenched her fists and a cold light flashed in her eyes. "Samuel Daly, you wait!" Chapter 102. Winter in Beaufort City was freezing. At this time, the temperature was a negative 10+ degrees. It seemed that every breath released could turn into ice in a short time. When she used to live in Beaufort City, Karen Daly did not feel that this place was very cold. In the past 3 years, as she lived in Chatterton Town, Karen Daly had been used to and liked the warmer weather in the south. Now that she had returned to Beaufort City, not only was the weather so cold that she could not bear it, but everything else was even more foreign to her. Sitting in Charlie's car, the heater in the car was on full blast, but Karen Daly still felt very cold, as if she was in a cold ice cellar, shivering with cold and a pale face. When she thought of her mother, the mother who had been wronged and had endured domestic violence for all her life, in the end. Thinking of this, Karen Daly closed her eyes and held her face with both hands to take a deep breath. At this moment, she could still be so calm, as if nothing had happened. That was because she did not see her mother jumping off the building with her own eyes. She did not see her mother's body with her own eyes. She did not believe that it was true. Sometimes people just like to deceive themselves. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, there was still a glimmer of hope in their hearts. At this time, Karen Daly was lying to herself. She felt that her mother was still alive and well. She could not find her mother, just because her mother was hidden by Samuel Daly. Or, she felt that she was having a terrible dream. If she slept at night and woke up the next morning, she would see her mother appear in front of her. "Karen." Charlie stretched out his hand and wanted to hold Karen Kyle in his arms, but as he saw the pair of cold eyes looking at him, he immediately withdrew his hand. Karen Daly glanced at him coldly and turned to look out of the window. Looking at the scenery outside the window, the snow was getting heavier. The streets were white and there were almost no pedestrians on the road. It was so cold that there was no trace of life in the city. After staring at Karen Daly for a long time, Charlie sighed and said, "Karen, I'll tell you the truth. Leo Kyle of Rovio Corporation, Inc. likes you. He wants you." "Did Leo Kyle fancy me?" Karen Daly found it funny. She had never met Leo Kyle. What did the prurient man fancy about her? "You may wonder why Leo Kyle knows you and why he fancies you." Charlie smiled. "Then you should ask your good husband, Kevin Kyle." Karen Daly raised her eyebrows. "What do you mean?" Charlie added, "Why did Kevin Kyle take you to that charity dinner not long ago? Why didn't he touch you after you got married? He just registered marriage with you, and then immediately took the position of CEO. Many things will make sense after thinking about it." Karen Daly sat in Charlie's car and did not want to run away because she received a message from Kevin Kyle before getting on the car. Kevin Kyle asked her to go with Charlie and followed Charlie to go to see whoever he wanted. To be obedient and not resist. He will handle everything else. So she didn't do anything. She followed Charlie obediently to meet the Rovio Corporation, Inc.'s legendary super big boss, Leo Kyle. She believed in Kevin Kyle, who must have had his reasons for asking her to do this. She didn't think about it in a bad way. However, after hearing what Charlie said, Karen Daly had some doubts in her heart. Could it be that Kevin Kyle's idea was the same as Charlie's? Just because Leo Kyle of Rovio Corporation, Inc. liked her, so in order to gain power, he would hand her over to someone else? Gold, power, interest. For these superficial things, Samuel Daly could be his wife and treat his daughter as a tool. In a man's mind, could wives and daughters only be objects to them? Karen Daly knew that she shouldn't doubt Kevin Kyle like this, but she couldn't ignore any possible signs. With this idea in mind, Karen Daly felt a little uneasy. What if what Kevin Kyle did these days was just an act? What if Kevin Kyle was the same as Samuel Daly? So how could she deal with a marriage without love? At this point, Karen Daly felt that she had to go to see Leo Kyle with Charlie. When she arrives, then she will know what Kevin Kyle was thinking about and his plans. Knowing that Karen Daly had some doubts in her heart, Charlie continued to say, "Leo Kyle should be the man of all women's dream. He is young and handsome. The most important thing is that he is the owner of the giant business empire, Rovio Corporation, Inc. It's probably the biggest wish of many women in this life to be fancied by him. If he gives you a little reward, it will already be enough for you to live a good life for the rest of your life. And that fake husband of yours, Kevin Kyle, in the end, is only just a dog of Leo Kyle's. There are only a few things he can give you in his life. But he can take advantage of you and get more benefits from Leo Kyle. I know you don't want to come back to me, but you can take the opportunity to capture Leo Kyle. He can help you do a lot of things that you can't do. After saying so much, Charlie still did not see any changes in Karen Daly's expression. He finally added, for example, use Leo Kyle to do something for your deceased mother. Hearing this, Karen Daly suddenly smiled. Charlie, aren't you afraid that I will use the Leo Kyle to defeat you? Charlie was speechless. He really did not think about this. He only thought about giving Karen Daly to Leo Kyle, who would give him benefits, but never thought that Karen Daly might bite him back. Karen Daly continued. Charlie, as long as I don't want to, no one can force me to do anything, including that Leo Kyle whom all of you look up to so much. Leo Kyle was very rich and handsome. He was indeed a man many women dreamed of, but so what? Although Kevin Kyle's status was lower than that of Leo Kyle, and maybe not as rich as Leo Kyle, but Kevin Kyle treated her well. As long as Kevin Kyle really treated her well and stayed with her, she would never betray him in this life. Karen Daly did want to do something for her mother. She even wanted to ruin Samuel Daly's reputation forever. But she has her own way. Who said that she had to use Leo Kyle's power? Charlie said a lot in one breath. He didn't mean to guide Karen Daly to use Leo Kyle due to stuff for her. Charlie said so much because he didn't want Karen Daly to live the rest of her life with that Kyle guy. After Karen Daly got along well with Leo Kyle, she would naturally get rid of the Kyle guy. At that time, he could see how pitiful Kevin Kyle will look. Charlie was a person that would destroy what he couldn't get instead of letting others have it. But what Karen Daly said just now made Charlie feel that she made sense. It was like carrying a rock and smashing his own feet. Chapter 103. Thinking that Karen Daly had not actually consummated her relationship with Kevin Kyle, Charlie felt a little agitated. If it weren't requested by Leo Kyle, he really wanted to taste her first and only send Karen Daly to him after tasting. But now he could only imagine. He didn't have the courage to take his woman. After all, Charlie still wanted to live in this circle. Charlie couldn't afford to offend him. Rovio Corporation Inc. Hotel was located in the center of Beaufort City. It had a distinctive design, and it is one of the landmark buildings in Beaufort City. After getting out of the car, Karen Daly stood in the open air and shivered coldly. She pulled her clothes tighter and wrapped herself in them. Charlie wanted to put his coat on Karen Daly, but he felt that it was inappropriate. Karen Daly was going to be Leo Kyle's woman. He couldn't have any relationship with Karen Daly in front of him. He couldn't be an enemy in Leo Kyle's mind. The head of the Rovio Corporation Inc. of Beaufort City, David Pitt, had been waiting at the gate of the hotel for a long time. When he saw them, he immediately greeted them. Miss Daly, you're finally here. Director Kyle had been waiting for you for a long time. President Kyle? Karen Daly repeated it silently. She was familiar with this title because everyone called Kevin Kyle like this. However, she forgot that Leo Kyle of Rovio Corporation Inc. has the same last name. Under normal circumstances, everyone would call him Director Kyle instead of Leo Kyle. The head of Rovio Corporation Inc. of Beaufort City came to welcome her. It was normal for her to not be acquainted with him, but Charlie knew David Pitt and greeted him warmly. Hello, Director Pitt. Has Leo Kyle arrived yet? Karen? The sudden low voice attracted everyone's attention. When she looked back, she saw Kevin Kyle walking towards her. Kevin Kyle took off the coat on his body as he walked. When he walked to her side, he had the coat in his hands. He put the coat over her and then put his arms around her and hugged her tightly. Kevin. Karen Daly called his name and suddenly felt a little bad. She had doubts about him earlier because of Charlie's words. It turned out that he asked her to go with Charlie, and it was Kevin Kyle who waited for her here, not the legendary Leo Kyle. Kevin Kyle did not say anything, but gently stroked her back, giving her a silent comfort. Seeing this scene, Charlie wanted to rush over and grab Karen Daly back, but was stopped by the people around Kevin Kyle. He could not get close to Kevin Kyle at all. Unable to get close, Charlie shouted, "Hey Kyle guy, get your hands off her. How can your dirty hands touch my Karen?" Charlie brought Karen Daly here to see Leo Kyle of Rovio Corporation Inc., and Karen Daly did not object. The deal was about to be done, but Kevin Kyle suddenly came out and sabotaged it. How could Charlie not be angry? However, Kevin Kyle could only see and hear Karen Daly. Karen Daly could only see and hear Kevin Kyle. They hugged each other tightly. Because they appeared in front of each other, they finally felt relieved. Kyle guy, you're fucking deaf, aren't you? Do you know whose territory is this? Why are you pissing around in my territory? Charlie phoned some people while shouting. Beaufort City is his base camp. In this land, no one dared to mess with him. His men were approaching, and Charlie was even more arrogant. Kyle guy, get out of Beaufort City immediately. If not, I'll pick a fight with you. However, Kevin Kyle ignored Charlie and gave Amelia Gray a look. Assistant Gray, please bring Madam to the room to rest. Fuck, I brought this person here. How dare you take her away? Charlie waved his hand, and his men rushed in with the intention of grabbing Karen Daly. In addition to Amelia Gray and David Pitt, there were 2 bodyguards by Kevin Kyle's side. One was holding Charlie, and the other stopped Charlie's men from approaching Kevin Kyle. Charlie had more than 10 men, but they were no match for Kevin Kyle's men. Before they could get close to Kevin Kyle, they were beaten down by Kevin Kyle's bodyguards. The hotel staff did not take any action. They were looking from afar and seemed to be waiting for instructions. Charlie rushed over and tried to grab Karen Daly back. Immediately, someone blocked him and gave him a hard punch. He could not approach Kevin Kyle and Karen Daly at all. Karen Daly raised her head from Kevin Kyle's arms and looked at Charlie. Charlie, thank you for bringing me out of the Daly house. Karen, are you trying to betray me? Charlie stared at Karen Daly. Yes, if it weren't for you, Samuel Daly wouldn't have let me leave the Daly house so easily. Karen Daly admitted that she was taking advantage of Charlie. However, Karen Daly was able to use Charlie because he wanted to give her away. She was just giving him an eye for an eye. Go to the room first and leave the rest to me. Kevin Kyle did not want her to have too much to do with Charlie. Kevin Kyle patted her head and said softly, Kevin? Karen Daly did not want to hand everything over to Kevin Kyle because she wanted to handle it by herself too. Kevin Kyle gave her a reassuring look and patted her head again. Listen to me. The 3 short words, like an order of love, always made people unable to resist him. Karen Daly nodded and followed Amelia Gray into the room. After watching Karen Daly enter the elevator and get to the 8th floor, Kevin Kyle looked back at Charlie. His eyes seemed to have a smile, but with a piercing cold. Charlie was noisy and shouted, Kyle Guy, who the fuck are you? Even if I break your arms and legs today, no one would even care about you here. Kevin Kyle just glanced at him coldly and turned to look at David Pitt. David Pitt, President Kyle. David Pitt immediately stepped forward and replied respectfully. Kevin Kyle continued, immediately draft a press release and announce to the public that Rovio Corporation Inc. will never cooperate with the Corp's subsidiaries. Find a few more media companies to promote it. The bigger the matter is, the better. David Pitt nodded. Yes, President Kyle. Kyle Guy, who do you think you are? How dare you stop Rovio Corporation Inc. from cooperating with Goop Corp? Charlie jumped up and shouted at Kevin Kyle. Kevin Kyle looked at him with sharp eyes. He said coldly, because I'm a Kyle. So what if your last name is Kyle? There are too many people with Kyle as their last name in the world. Even if your last name is Kyle, you can't be Leo Kyle of Rovio Corporation Inc. When Charlie finished his words, he suddenly realized something. David Pitt, the director of Rovio Corporation Inc. in Beaufort City, was personally appointed by Leo Kyle. David Pitt has a very high position in the industry. Everyone knew that he only attends to Leo Kyle's orders. But at this time, David Pitt was respectful towards Kevin Kyle, which meant... Charlie looked at Kevin Kyle again and stared at him for a long time. He said in a trembling voice, Are you really Leo Kyle? Chapter 104. After hesitation, Charlie hoped that someone could stand out and answer him. No. However, no one did answer him. David Pitt stood up and said, Young master, this is our President Kyle. Is there a problem? Is he really Leo Kyle? The Leo Kyle who's in charge of Rovio Corporation Inc.? Charlie shook his head, hoping that David Pitt would deny it. For Charlie, this Kyle guy just happened to have Kyle as his family name and was working in Rovio Corporation Inc., but he definitely was not Leo Kyle of Rovio Corporation Inc. Yes, David Pitt said coldly. Impossible. That's ridiculous. How could he be Leo Kyle? Charlie looked at Kevin Kyle again. Kevin Kyle was just Kevin Kyle. He was only Innovative Tech's CEO, and he had no major backup. How could he become the Leo Kyle in a blink of an eye? If Kevin Kyle was Leo Kyle, then the cooperation with Rovio Corporation Inc. he wanted was going down the drain. As he thought about how he could not cooperate with Rovio Corporation Inc. and even angered Rovio Corporation Inc. to a point where the ties were cut, Charlie broke out in a cold sweat. His position in Gook Corp was already not hopeful, as he might be replaced by others at any time. To strive for the cooperation with Rovio Corporation Inc. was his only hope. If people knew about Rovio Corporation Inc.'s decision to not cooperate with Gook Corp, he could only watch helplessly, as he would be abandoned by his father and could no longer enter Gook Corp anymore. In fact, Charlie should have thought of it earlier. There must be some connection between Leo Kyle and Kevin Kyle. Moreover, Kevin Kyle's aura, even if he just stood still, was very intimidating. That kind of aura could not be owned by the CEO of a small company like Innovative Tech. There should be other identities behind him. But Charlie was too trustful of Duncan Miller, such an idiot. He never associated Kevin Kyle with Rovio Corporation Inc.'s Leo Kyle. No, President Kyle? At this time, Charlie appeared very miserable. He was so pathetic that he could not even utter a complete sentence. Kevin Kyle glanced coldly at Charlie, turned around, and left. Charlie wanted to chase him, but when he thought of what he had done, he had no dignity to chase him. Even if he did chase Kevin Kyle, what could he do? Young Master Charlie. Get out of my way. You are a group of good-for-nothing. I gave you good food and drinks. What did you do for me all day? Charlie raised his foot and kicked the people around him, as a way to vent all his anger of Kevin Kyle off the people under Charlie. Charlie might be too shocked, but after a while, he was still in a trance, and his legs were out of energy. He walked to the door and accidentally fell to the ground. His subordinates helped him up but were kicked by him too. He cursed, get out of here. Anyone who comes near me, I will kill his whole family. David Pitt could not help but shook his head when he saw Charlie shouting and cursing. If Charlie took over Goop Corp, there would be no future at all. Charlie and Kevin Kyle were of the same age, and they were all born in wealthy families. However, one was a playboy who made trouble everywhere because of his dirty mouth. The other was the leader of the Rovio Corporation Inc., who was calm, reserved, low-key, and with good principles. In comparison, President Kyle was so much better than Charlie. Karen Daly stood by the window in the room, holding the ring in her hand. She straightened her back and stared blankly at the white snow outside. It was as if her mother was standing outside the window, smiling gently and kindly at her. Karen, my daughter, you're the best, and I love you the most. Mom. Karen Daly rushed over and tried to hug her mother, but she bumped into the glass window. The pain woke her up in an instant. She knew that the scene earlier was her hallucination. Karen, Kevin Kyle opened the door and came in and saw the scene. Seeing her hit the glass window, his voice was a little gloomy. Karen Daly raised her head and smiled at him. You're back. Kevin Kyle looked at her and frowned. After a long while he said, Karen, you have me. I know. Karen Daly winked at him playfully. She was clearly smiling, but Kevin Kyle felt that she was even sadder than when she cried. He held her in his arms and hugged her tightly. Being held tightly by Kevin Kyle, she felt his warmth being pressed onto her skin. Thus her body became less cold, and her heart was less lonely. He held her so tightly as he wanted badly to protect her. He didn't say anything, but she felt his concern. She gently pushed him and said, Kevin, you are hugging so tight I can't breathe. Kevin Kyle ignored her and said, I'll accompany you to the funeral center. No. Karen Daly refused without thinking. Kevin Kyle held her face. Karen, it has already happened. You can't act as though it didn't happen. Karen Daly admitted that she was afraid. She was afraid that her last fantasy would disappear, and she was afraid to see what she was unwilling to see. However, Kevin Kyle was right. It had already happened. She could not pretend that nothing had happened. She had to face it bravely. When she was young, her mother often touched her head and said, Karen, you are the bravest and the strongest. In the future, without me by your side, you will take care of yourself too. Now that she has grown up, she could take good care of herself, but she wanted to take good care of her mother too. On that day, they agreed that her mother would go home with Karen Daly after leaving the hospital. Her mother had promised her personally, but why didn't she wait for a little longer? Wait for Karen Daly to arrive at the Daly house, then she could take her mother away. Karen. Let's go. Karen Daly took a deep breath and looked up at Kevin Kyle with a smile. Kevin Kyle had never hated Karen Daly's smile as much as he did now. She could give her fake smile to anyone else, but when Kevin Kyle was present, he only hoped that she would be her most true self. However, he couldn't do anything. Kevin Kyle didn't even want Karen Daly to know that he had already seen through her fake smile. Samuel Daly knew what Karen Daly's personality was like. He had expected Karen Daly to attend the funeral, so he had already asked his men to wait along the road to the funeral center. He looked at Karen Daly, and then looked at the Kevin Kyle beside Karen Daly. Kevin Kyle also looked at Samuel Daly with a smile in his eyes, but it somehow made Samuel Daly shudder. Samuel Daly avoided Kevin Kyle's gaze and looked at Karen Daly again, saying, Karen, those things you did 3 years ago, your mother had already given up on you. Now that she had passed away, you should not disturb her anymore. Chapter 105, Hehe. Karen Daly sneered and looked at Samuel Daly coldly. This was her sanctimonious father. She never knew that Samuel Daly had such skills to turn the world upside down. Samuel Daly said, Karen, you'd better go back. I won't let you disturb your mother. What else? Karen Daly was not angry. She looked at Samuel Daly with a death glare. She wanted to see what kind of shameless words Samuel Daly could say today. Samuel Daly looked around, but did not dare to look straight into Karen Daly's eyes. He waited for a while and said, If you still regard her as your mother, you should be kind and let her leave with peace. Don't disturb her. As he said, don't disturb her, Karen Daly's anger rushed up. If it weren't for Samuel Daly, her mother would still be alive. It was Samuel Daly who killed his own wife and Karen Daly's dearest mother. Samuel Daly. Karen Daly was about to get angry, but Kevin Kyle reached out and pulled her back. He touched her head and whispered, Karen, we are here to see Mother. Before he came, Kevin Kyle had already expected that Samuel Daly might do such a thing, so he made some arrangements with Amelia Gray. Being pulled by Kevin Kyle and hearing his voice, Karen Daly suppressed her anger and glared at Samuel Daly. At this time, a black car quickly drove to their side and stopped. A fat, middle-aged man got off the car. The man bowed before Kevin Kyle and said, Director Kyle, sorry to keep you waiting. Kevin Kyle nodded. Deputy Morris, please lead the way. The fat man, Jack Morris, hurriedly took 2 steps forward and said as he walked, President Kyle, this way please. My men are not sensible. Please forgive us for wasting your time. But Deputy Morris, you promised me? Samuel Daly also followed, but before he could finish his words, he was glared at by Jack Morris. Samuel Daly's work every day was to find a way to blend with the rich and powerful. It had been like this for decades. That is why he had learned the ability to observe people's speech and appearance. He heard from Christine Daly that Karen Daly was married, but he did not investigate who the man was. Karen Daly left the Daly family and walked away with a bad reputation. With Karen Daly's bad reputation, it would be easy to get married to any Tom, Dick, or Harry. But it was impossible to find someone richer than the Gook family, so he did not care much at all. However, when he saw the man's appearance and dominant aura, in addition to Jack Morris's attitude towards him, the man must not be an ordinary person. If he was not an ordinary person, who could he be? Even if he had a background, it was nothing compared to the Gook family. Instinctively, Samuel Daly regarded this as the first thing to be measured in a person. The background of a person was the standard for him to decide whether he should flatter that person or not. "Dad, what are you looking at? Is Karen here?" Christine Daly held 2 bottles of water, which Samuel Daly asked her to buy just now. Samuel Daly looked back at Christine Daly and then looked at Karen Daly and the husband. "Christine, have you seen the man Karen married?" Christine Daly thought for a moment and said, "I saw him from a distance when I was in Chatterton Town that day. It was too far away and I couldn't see him clearly." Samuel Daly said, "I think the man's appearance and personality are good. He doesn't look like an ordinary man. Go there and have a look later. Find out about his background." "They're here?" Christine Daly followed his father's gaze and saw Karen Daly and Kevin Kyle walking away. "Dad, why didn't you stop them?" Samuel Daly narrowed his eyes and said, "Deputy Morris came here personally to welcome them. How can I stop them?" "Deputy Morris personally welcomed them?" Christine Daly looked at the 2 people in a distance. She tried to recall if this was the man she had met 4 years ago. The back of the man who was married to Karen Daly was quite similar to Matthew Kyle's, but it shouldn't be so coincidental that they were the same person. Jack Morris led Karen Daly and Kevin Kyle to the morgue of the funeral center. It was a huge morgue, and the body was stored in a proper area. When the family members arrive, the staff will lead them with a code and pull the body out of the compartment. Karen Daly had been unwilling to believe that her mother had really passed away until she saw her mother lying in the small compartment and saw her face that had turned pale, along with the frozen blood on her forehead. "Mom?" Karen Daly wanted to touch her mother again and take a closer look at her, but her legs went weak and her strength was instantly drained. If Kevin Kyle hadn't held her in time, she would have fallen to the ground. "Mom." In addition to this word, Karen Daly's voice was too speechless to speak more. Her heart seemed to be taken out. A cool breeze blew through her heart, and it felt empty inside. "My Karen, you must be very good-looking when you grow up. My Karen, when you grow up you must marry a hero. Of course, you are the only treasure in Mommy's life." My Karen. What her mother said the past was like a movie, and the memories of them appeared on Karen Daly's mind. However, this person who had warmed her whole childhood could no longer say a word and could not touch her head to whisper her name anymore. My Karen. Why were the heavens so cruel? The knot between her mother and Karen Daly had just been untied. A day ago, she thought that their future was still so bright and happy. She could take care of her mother soon and have a good life with her. However, her mother was lying in the cold ice cabinet and had no future. Perhaps. Samuel Daly was right. She caused her mother's death. She left Beaufort City alone, leaving her mother in the hell-like Daly house. Why didn't she come early to take her mother away? Why didn't God give her a chance to take care of her mother? Why? The emotion that Karen Daly had been enduring for the whole day finally collapsed, and her tears rushed down like beads from broken strings. She almost cried out hysterically, like a trapped beast, and every sound was filled with deep despair and sadness. Her heart was empty, as if nothing could fill it up again. Kevin Kyle hugged her and did not say anything to comfort her. He just let Karen Daly's tears wet his clothes and let her cry. After crying, she would not be so sad anymore. However, looking at her tears, his heart was also aching. His own mood was out of control. Kevin Kyle had never experienced this kind of feeling before. At this moment, he felt it from Karen Daly. He did not try to suppress it at all.